Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Walk down with me here.
Yeah.
And I'll show you where Bridget's home would have been. So number 39 Gloucester Street would have been just about 10 houses down on this side. She would have been very close to the market here on Cumberland Street, where she was picked up.
Wow. So she was found wandering the streets, but she was
actually
outside her house.
Her house.
Such a kind of shocking revelation. It's insane.
Yeah.
So why was she taken away?
Because it was a common thing at the time for the NSPCC and the police to give as a reason for taking a child into care that they were wandering without a guardian.
At the time, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, or NSPCC, saw it as its mission to rescue vulnerable children from the streets. But its inspectors were criticised for being overzealous in removing children like Bridget from poor families like the Kinahans.
The NSPCC didn't understand that taking children away from their families is a really serious and crucial thing to do.
She was kind of nabbed like a stray dog.
Well, can I tell you what the inspectors from the NSPCC were called in this area? The cruelty men.
Wow.
The cruelty men, because they came and took children away from their families. And they were dreaded and feared by everybody.
My mum is going to be so shocked to hear that.
Does she not know?
She doesn't know that part of the story. She knows as much as I did that my grandmother, when she was 6, was found, you know, wandering the streets. I mean, that's what it says on this document, that she was found wandering, which is obviously a lie.
Yes.
Which is really, really shocking.
No, I mean, if she was wandering, she would have been a good bit away from her home. She's literally outside the door.
Yeah.
So it was very unfair and very hard on her parents and on her siblings who must have missed her, you know.
Katrina is bringing George to the Tenement Museum at 14 Henrietta Street to show him the living conditions for poor families in the city at the time his grandmother Bridget was picked up.
Okay, let's come on in here. There we go.
Wow.
Now, this part of the room is set up as it might have been for a tenement dwelling in around 1911, 1912, up to the mid-20s. So it's bang on the button for your family's period in Gloucester Street.
I mean, how many people would have been in here?
There could have been 8.
Wow.
We have a straw mattress.
So people would have slept on top of each other, under the
Head
bed.
to toe, very often. If you can imagine what it was like to live here.
I mean, people washed in here, they cleaned their clothes in here.
Yeah. These were the conditions for 20,000 families, including yours,
Yeah.
back at the turn of the last century. So
incredible.
you can see why it would be very agreeable for children to go out of doors. Children everywhere in the city were out in the streets. They're very visible in photographs. And we could look at some of those photographs now and let you see what life was like on the streets. And this gives you an idea of the numbers of people who lived in these houses. At this point, Dublin had the worst slums in Europe. I think this may be the contents of 2 of the houses on the street. Bridget would have understood this kind of scenario very easily.
I mean, she would have been about that big, the little one in the white dress.
She would, exactly. And mortality rates incredibly high.
I think when you look at that, and then you kind of look back at that, it gives it a whole new kind of gravitas. I'm just imagining how I would survive in a situation like that. With all
How do you think you would?
Oh, I don't know, but, you know, you just think if you were a child with a lot of spirit or you had any kind of individuality, I mean, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah. Now, here are a bunch of little kids, 3 of them barefoot, 1 a little boy who's dressed as a girl because they were the clothes that were available
That would have
to
been
his
me.
family. That would have been you. That's an early George, look. And fab boots, look. And it was tough. And a lot of them didn't make it to their 10th birthdays.
So my grandmother would have been kind of removed from a situation like this, really.
She would. That's a point to remember.
Was it better? This is my grandmother Bridget's birth certificate. The 9th of January, 1913. And I recognise that date because I have a document that states that my grandmother was born on that day. John Kinahan, that was the father, right?
That's right.
What does that say? Kate
Catherine.
Kinahan.
And that's his occupation.
Labourer.
He was a labourer. Exactly.
Well, we carried that tradition on.
We're moving on now to another document, George. This is the Indoor Relief Register from the North Dublin Union Workhouse. You know what a workhouse is, the place where people went when they had nowhere else to go.
It wasn't the Holiday Inn.
It was not the Holiday Inn,
No.
well said.
John Kinahan, 39, Upper Gloucester Street. He's 36.
Yes. He goes in on
November 22nd, 1915. Hospital treatment.
So he's in for his health. And go across to the end then. When does he leave? He's number 8.
30th December 1915.
So he's in there for 3 weeks. He's using the workhouse intelligently as a place to get health care. Doctors were expensive and we didn't have a free health service or anything like it. So the thing we know from this now is that in 1915, John has poor health.
So was he around when my grandmother was taken away?
Well, the next documents we're going to look at will answer that question. And first of all, there's her mother, Catherine or Kate.
And this is the death certificate. 1922.
1922.
Yeah.
So that's 3 years after Bridget was taken in.
She died.
She died, yeah. She lost her mother.
45.
Yeah.
Young.
Very young.
Pneumonia.
Which was a disease of the poor.
And what about John?
Here's John. Again, check the date. So she dies in 1922.
1926.
26.
He's 41.
Yeah.
Heart failure.
But also up here, malignant
Disease of the esophagus.
That's right.
It sounds like he had cancer.
Yes.
So young. So she's taken away and they both die pretty soon.
Pretty soon afterwards. So they died.
That still doesn't answer the question of where they were. What was... does it answer the question? Sorry, am I being completely dim here?
No, you're not.
No.
We don't know. But what I can
So
tell you...
we don't know where they were when she was taken, but we know that...
We know that they were in ill health, that he was in particular in ill health, as far back as 1915. Maybe the family decided because their health was bad and because conditions were poor that she might be better off in an industrial school rather than staying
We
at
don't
home.
know that.
We don't know that.
And the other question is, these lovely people, did they make these kids' lives better by putting them in an industrial school?
And that is the big question.
I don't think it is a question. I don't think things were better. You know, I think that however bad things are, when you're with people that love you, even the worst conditions can be bearable. You know, I think that you're always better off with your family.
It is very sad.
Very sad.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us as a family to know the circumstances of Bridget's parents, the fact that they were ill and they were really poor, as most people were. So it does kind of give you some solace. But it is a kind of irony, you know, the NSPCC, their job was to protect children. It's just, you know, that's what makes me really angry.
George is on his way to the site of Golden Bridge Industrial School, where his grandmother Bridget was sent in 1919.
I found my mum. She was very, very upset. She cried. And then I rang her again and sort of tried to explain the circumstances of her grandparents, what was going on for them. And I think that made her feel a little bit better. I have my own ideas about what went on at Golden Bridge, so I feel it's going to be quite an emotional experience to be in that space.